Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm your host, Karen Soutar, and I'm here to talk some Blue Jays baseball with you for the next half an hour or so. Sunny Side of the Dome is brought to you by Jays from the Couch. We stream live Thursdays at 6 p.m., and you can find us on Jays from the Couch's Facebook page, Twitter page, or YouTube channel. And if you do happen to be following along live, and you think of a question or a comment, please do send it all in. I love that interaction with the audience. I think it makes the show that much better. And if you can't catch the live version, but you still want to see what my 2 cents are this week, then that's great. And when you're ready for us, we're ready for you. You can catch either the archive version on one of those medium, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and you can also download and listen as a podcast. Any quality podcast carrier carries the Jays from the Couch lineup. Speaking of which, if you like the content here at Sunny Side of the Dome, be sure and check out the main Jays from the Couch podcast. Hopefully you're doing that. And anyway, there's lots of interesting stuff there. It's our flagship show. It's Mondays at 7 p.m. and hosted by Shaun Doyle, senior editor, founder of Jays from the Couch. And he's always got lots of interesting stuff, other people to interact with, different ideas, different things to talk about, the fake news segment, which is always lots of fun, and lots of great stuff there. So hopefully you're checking that out. So, happy Thursday evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hopefully not too disappointed over this afternoon's loss. Yeah, I know. One more run, losing these one-run games. It's a little bit frustrating. But yeah, haven't been with you for a while. That wasn't planned. Just things keep coming up, different scheduling conflicts and so forth. But it looks like it's been a few weeks since I've sat down and talked about our Blue Jays. So a lot has happened during that 3 weeks. Excuse me a second. My ginger ale. So what I wanted to do, since there's so many transactions, and if I didn't find a way to organize it, I could probably take up the whole show just talking about comings and goings and who's doing what. For the leading off, I wanted to try to organize it a little bit differently and maybe get through all of the information a little bit more succinctly. So the trade deadline, as everybody knows by now, has come and gone. It was August the 1st at 6 o'clock p.m. And the Blue Jays kind of had an interesting trade deadline. So leading up to, on the day of the deadline, and then a few days before that, and even a week or so before that, they made 3 separate trades. What they did, and I'll be honest with you, I've been a diehard fan for more than 30 years, and I've never seen a situation where the same 2 teams get together and make 3 separate trades in the roughly 2 weeks leading up to the trade deadline. It's for me, that was almost unheard of prior to this season. But the Blue Jays they made 3 trades with the St. Louis Cardinals, pretty crazy. So they acquired left-handed pitcher Genesis Cabrera, a right-handed pitcher Jordan Hicks, and shortstop Paul DeJong. So how have those guys been doing? Well, Genesis Cabrera, he was actually designated for assignments by the Cardinals, and to be honest, his numbers really didn't look that impressive. Had some pretty good strikeout numbers, but his earned run average, his walks, just really too high. And then the Blue Jays picked him up for 19-year-old minor league catcher Sammy Hernandez, who, I'll be honest, I'd never even heard of. So but best of luck, Sammy Hernandez, and all of that. But Cabrera he has actually really impressed me. He's been so much better with the Blue Jays than I ever imagined he could be looking at those stats. So, and it's really been great having that second left-handed pitcher in the bullpen to go with Tim Meza. If you're pitching against a lineup that's got a few really dangerous left-handed hitters, you can bring Cabrera in, and then if you need to, you can bring Meza in the next time through the order. In fact, the Blue Jays did that. I believe there was a game in Boston when they did that, utilized the both of them, and it worked perfectly. So honestly, he's been doing really well. I was over the moon when the Blue Jays got Jordan Hicks. I mean, objective people say that he was the best arm available, relief pitcher wise on the trade market. Jordan Hicks is pretty much the hardest thrower in baseball. He routinely throws 100, and he has gotten as high as 102, or even, I think he's touched 104. I don't know how often, but often enough. He's a pretty tough pitcher. He kind of struggled in April, but since then his numbers have been a lot better. He's gotten into 5 games so far with the Blue Jays, only gave up runs on one occasion. That was the first game he pitched for them, and really it was a blowout loss anyway. So did he go out there? Was he throwing 100%? I'm not sure that he was in that game necessarily. Maybe he was holding some of it back because really the Jays didn't have much of a chance to win that game anyway. But since then, he has not been scored upon. Couldn't do any better for the Blue Jays really than he's been doing. Paul DeJong, he is a shortstop, hasn't done a lot with the bat. Prior to today, I just jotted down some stats. So he's had 30 at-bats with the Blue Jays, and he's gotten 2 hits. No walks, also 11 strikeouts. He came over as basically a very strong defender at the shortstop position, and there haven't been any issues with his defense. He's been fine. So anyway, that's what the Jays got at the trade deadline. There were some rumors that they might actually have reacquired Teoscar Hernandez, and then the Mariners ended up not trading Teoscar. So some Blue Jay fans were excited about the prospect of maybe getting him back. Didn't happen. But anyway, c'est la vie. Excuse me a second. Okay, so those were the acquisitions that they did make. So again, for Cabrera, they gave up Sammy Hernandez. For Paul DeJong, they traded away a minor league pitcher, Matt Swanson. Looked up his stats; they're decent enough. I mean, all the best to him with the Cardinals organization. Maybe he'll get a chance in the majors. Maybe he'll do well. Hope so. For his sake, I'll be honest. When this trade happened and I saw who the Jays gave up, my first thought was, who? I really hadn't heard of him. And while I am most certainly not the expert on the minor league system that, for example, Jays from the Couch's Ryan Mueller is. You want to know anything about the Blue Jays minor leagues, the players, everything about them inside out and backwards, he's the person to ask. So yeah, he's a really great resource. But I do try to pay attention as much as I can. Certainly the higher ranked prospects, and even guys that are in the farm system that people talk about that are their higher ranked prospects that look like maybe they could do some damage at some points. I think I've heard a lot of their names. So for me to not have heard of this person, it really didn't bother me that they gave him up. So Blue Jays felt they had a need at shortstop, which I'll get more to in a bit. And that's absolutely fine. So for Jordan Hicks, excuse me, even though he is a rental, he's free agent eligible at the end of this season. They weren't going to get a pitcher of his caliber without giving up something of value. And they did. They gave up 2 pitching prospects who I definitely heard of. So 2 right-handed pitchers. So Adam Kloffenstein and Sam Rubbersack. And in pronouncing that, and I really hope I got that correctly, yes, I want to say a special thank you to my Jays from the Couch colleague Bob Ritchie, who let me know that if I'm having trouble pronouncing a player's name, that one resource is their baseball reference page. That it actually had the pronunciation spelled out there. So, and I didn't know that. Did everybody out there? Did you already know that, or is there anyone else that didn't know that? If you're looking for how to pronounce a player's name or anything, so if you didn't know, you learned something today along with me. And if I'm the only one that didn't know, well, don't know what to say there. But anyway, yeah. So those two I've definitely heard of. They both have some talent, and either or both of them could be successful major league pitchers someday. They had both pitched at Double A. They had some decent stats. And now that they're in the Cardinals system, the Cardinals, I was a little surprised actually, the Cardinals assigned them to their AAA team. So very small sample size. Robertson, I think he had a bit of a rough outing, but it's just an outing so far, so see how he does going forward. Kloffenstein, I think he had a pretty good outing, so again, all the best to the two of them. And when the trade was announced, there were people, Blue Jays fans on Twitter, saying, oh, they overpaid to get Jordan Hicks, and they really shouldn't have done that. Myself, like I said, I am over the moon. I am so happy that the Blue Jays got immediate help, and I don't mind that they gave up something to get him, because they were never going to get a pitcher of his caliber for absolutely nothing. So, you know what? I hope the two of them go on to have terrific careers, but this is the cost if you want to win now. If you want to add pieces that are going to help you win now, pieces that other teams could conceivably want, then you have to give up something of value. That's the way it's done. So that's who was acquired. That's who was traded away. With all the roster moves in and out and so forth, those three additions and whatnot, there were some players that were designated for assignments. So Trent Thornton, excuse me, he ended up being traded to the Seattle Mariners for shortstop Mason McCoy. Excuse me. So, yes, Trent Thornton, Mitch White was designated for assignment, and I'm actually a little bit surprised he went unclaimed, and he's now been assigned to AAA as a non-roster player. So he's there at least, and we'll see what happens there. Jordan Luplow, he was also designated for assignment. He was claimed by the Minnesota Twins on the same day Byron Buxton went on the injured list, I believe. So they needed an outfielder. I don't know if Luplow's necessarily going to be a starter. He might even be a bench player, as he was with the Jays, but they needed someone, and Luplow was available. So there you go. And then the other DFA, so Thomas Hatch, he was recalled. His final outing with the Blue Jays, unfortunately, wasn't a good one. And when he was designated for assignment, the Pittsburgh Pirates claimed him. So all the best. So those players, honestly, I mean, they had their chances with the Blue Jays. The results were mixed in a lot of cases. They really weren't what a contending team would have been looking for. And you wish them the best elsewhere. And honestly, there is something about Mitch White. I still think that there's a good major league pitcher in there. Just over a year ago, he had some decent stats with the LA Dodgers. For some reason, he just never was able to put it together with the Jays. I don't know, maybe a fresh start next season. That's assuming he's still in the organization by then. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, so those are some players that were on the 40-man roster that aren't anymore. Most of them are with organizations. Mitch White is still around. Option, Nate Pearson. So he was sent down, called back up, and then sent back down again. And I love Nate Pearson. I still haven't given up on his talents. I really think he could be great, and he really was for a while there when they recalled him in later April. He was one of the more reliable relief pitchers that the Blue Jays had. And then here and there, he had a shaky outing. And again, his last game for the Jays before he was sent back down, he just wasn't getting anything done. And I watched him pitch, and I thought, they're sending him back down. And when it actually happened, it wasn't much of a surprise. So I really hope he can put something together and come back at some point and actually be consistent and yeah, live up to the promise that his talent has always had. We'll see, but for now, he's back at AAA. All the best to him. And yeah, um, one somewhat unique situation. So Jay Jackson, he was away from the team for a period of time. A lot of you may have heard about his young son that was 14 or 15 weeks premature. So they've got him in the hospital, and he had done a round of medication, and he was finished that, and they were switching him to a new round of medication. And apparently, having his father there has helped him in the past. So the Blue Jays granted him emergency family medical leave to go and be with his family, and he did that, and now he's back. So all the best, obviously, to Jay Jackson, his fiance, and most definitely the very, very young son. Hope he continues to improve, and it's great to have Jay Jackson back. Hyunjin Ryu, he was activated, so finally came back after Tommy John surgery. Has had two starts. The first one, it was so-so. I mean, it was against Baltimore, a really good hitting team, and it was his first outing in Major League Baseball in about 14 months. So the result wasn't terrible. It wasn't anything great. And then he had one more start since then, and took a no hitter. He had a no hitter going when he got hit in the leg with a comebacker, and managed to make the out at first base, and then collapsed in pain. So that was really unfortunate to see, and it honestly seemed like it was going to be worse than it apparently turned out being. Did walk off the field under his own power. We heard x-rays were negative, and now the Blue Jays expect him to make his next scheduled start, which is this Sunday back in Toronto against the Cubs. So fingers crossed that goes well. And Chad Green, he was sent on a rehab assignment, pitched at a few different minor league levels, has looked really good, hasn't allowed any runs. From all reports, minor league hitters, that they've been very much overmatched, as they should be, against him. And then he pitched a couple of days ago in Buffalo, and something really unfortunate happened, if you haven't heard about it. So the catcher, Tyler Heineman, attempted to make a throw to second base to catch a runner trying to steal. Chad Green, unfortunately, had his back turned, so I'm not really sure what he was looking at, but the ball, when Heineman threw it, it bounced off Chad Green's head, and then ricocheted, and so anyway, yeah, he had to be taken out of the game, and now he is in 7-day concussion protocol. So that's never a good thing, obviously. Head injuries are not things you want to mess around with. And all the best to Chad Green. I mean, they said he was nearing a season debut with the Blue Jays, and now that's been put on hold, and there's no real way of knowing when he's going to be ready to be back, which is really unfortunate, because he would have been a great add to the Blue Jays bullpen, and still might be. We'll see. Excuse me a second. Okay, still more to get through. My goodness. So injured list. Jordan Romano, you recall that he had issues. He did pitch in the All-Star game. He had to leave with some back tightness, and he said he was fine. Since then, did get into a few games with the Jays. And then, unfortunately, it flared up again in a regular season game. He did have to be placed on the injured list. But time flies. Apparently, He is eligible to come off this Saturday, which is only a couple of days away, and he has been throwing, and reports on his progress are good. So who knows? We might see Jordan Romano back in the majors sooner than later. Fingers crossed. Um, Otto Lopez, in order to clear another spot on the 40-man roster, he was placed on the 60-day injured list. He was already on the 7-day IL in the minors. It's 7 days rather than 10. So that's unfortunate. All the best to him. Bo Bichette, a huge loss. If anyone was watching that game, I'm sure a lot of you were. So, excuse me, he hits what ended up being a single, was trying to run, stretch it into a double, and partway between first and second, he just stopped, and everybody knew something had to be really wrong. So he was placed on the IL with knee tendonitis. So hence the trade for Paul DeJong. They had to have somebody who could fill in at shortstop, and if he wasn't necessarily going to be the hitting star that Bo Bichette is, because let's face it, not many players are, and if they are, most of them aren't being traded. But yeah, they needed somebody to fill in and at least provide reliable defense. So Bichette has been out for a while. And I mean, the Jays have done all right as a team without him. They're 6-4. If anything, but he thought the season was over when he was lost. Well, no, it's not. They're still very much in contention, holding on to a playoff spot. But fingers crossed that Bichette will actually be ready to come back sooner than later. As well, Trevor Richards, who's really carried a lot of the load this season out of the bullpen, and done very well. He's on the injured list with neck inflammation, so hope he'll be okay. Hope he can come back sooner than later. And Kevin Kiermaier, he had to go on the injured list after making a catch in Boston up against that chain link fence wall or whatever the heck it is out there, and ended up cutting his elbow. He's bleeding, got 8 stitches, and so now he just needs time to heal. I'm sorry, but I'm not happy about that. I mean, why is that allowed to still be there when it's clearly a safety hazard? Why is someone on the injured list for something that is so preventable? If they don't have the gumption to get off their butts themselves and fix that, then Major League Baseball should mandate it. They shouldn't be allowing their players to play in what is really not a completely safe environment. So I'm not happy about that. And we miss Kevin Kiermaier. Get well soon. Recalled again, lots of ups and downs. So Bowden Francis, he was called back up, sent back down, and then called back up again. So he's around. Ernie Clement was called back up and then sent back down again. Thomas Hatch, we've already mentioned him. Nathan Lucas, he was called back up when Kiermaier had to go on the injured list. And then there's Davis Schneider. So here's the man with an OPS over 900 in AAA, just has been having a phenomenal season down there with the bat, and so many people have been talking about they should call him up. Well, they finally did, and he had an unbelievable weekend in Boston against the Red Sox. And I don't even remember how many hits, 9 for 13 or something like that. I forget. But yeah, he just did great. And they apparently nicknamed him Babe Schneider. Since then, when they went to Cleveland, well, Cleveland has much better pitching, hasn't hit nearly as well, has drawn some walks and all of that. But let's pump the brakes before we announce him the next savior of this team. But anyway, excuse me a second. Oh boy, so I want to get into the heart of the order, and here we are almost running out of time. Just there were so many darn transactions that I wanted to get through them all and try to summarize it and all that. So I guess what I'll do is combine that. The heart of the order, I'll get to Blue Jays colored glasses in a minute, but I really feel like this Toronto Blue Jays team has finally hit their stride. And I got that feeling after watching the series in Boston against the Red Sox. They were a team, along with the Baltimore Orioles, that had absolutely given our Toronto Blue Jays fits all season. That's you've all seen the stats, I'm sure, over and over again. That against teams outside of its own division, the Toronto Blue Jays have the best record in Major League Baseball. Within the division, it's another story. But even against the Yankees and the Rays, it's not all that bad. They're 3-4 against both of those teams. Now, that's not great, but it's also not the sky is falling terrible. It was against Boston and Baltimore that they've absolutely been abysmal. Before this past weekend, they hadn't even won a game against Boston this season. Then they go into Fenway and something happened. They found something, they put it all together. They managed to sweep the Boston Red Sox at home in Fenway, and something just felt different for me, like something really clicked for this team. I mean, you've got, as a team, in the offseason, they said they wanted to focus on run prevention. And honestly, I think they've really done a good job in that way. Their pitching staff, earned run average 3.73. That's number one in all of Major League Baseball. Defensive runs saved by fielding Bible per team, the Blue Jays far and away the best in Major League Baseball as a team in total with 67. The second place team, the Milwaukee Brewers, almost 20 less, 48 as a team compared to the Blue Jays' 67. That is so impressive. What is it? What is the one ingredient that seems to have been missing all of this time? It's hitting. It's clutch hitting. It's be able to hit with runners in scoring position. It's taking advantage and being able to score runs in bunches. And they seem to find the keys to be able to do that in Boston. Going into Cleveland, unfortunately, they could only manage 2-2, as we all know. But Cleveland has a much better pitching staff than Boston does. So it was somewhat predictable that they would score fewer runs. Still want to see them keep working on that clutch hitting. But I'm feeling pretty good, actually, about where the Blue Jays are sitting right now. So we are almost out of time for this week, and yes, kind of a funny episode the way it all unfolded there, but I do want to leave you with my usual through Blue Jay colored glasses. So here we are on August the 10th, and we're getting through a tougher stretch of games, 17 games in 17 days with no off days. They've managed to go with a 6-man rotation and honestly manage it pretty darn well. Just about everybody has been carrying their weight. Yusei Kikuchi has the best earned run average in Major League Baseball since the All-Star break. Who thought that was going to be the case when we looked at just how badly he did last season? And he's really turned it around, and he really deserves a lot of credit for the way he's performed this season. Brandon Belt, so many people thought that his signing was going to be disastrous, that the Blue Jays started the season with a road trip, a very long road trip. Brandon Belt on that road trip had 1 hit. But since then, he's been everything the Blue Jays could have hoped for. He's a left-handed hitter. His OPS has been very good. I mean, it's one of the best on the Blue Jays, and if he had enough at bats to be a qualifier, he'd be in the top 20 in the American League anyway. And he's given them everything. He's given them hits. He's given them walks. There's a number of things that he does right that you don't necessarily think of from a 35-year-old who's had knee surgeries, things like bunt singles. He's not particularly fast, but he is a smart base runner. So I think all the ingredients are there on this Blue Jays team. After they won on Friday, there was some talk on the late night, the post-game show with Blair and Barker, and John Schneider made some comments about 9 guys all pulling in the same direction and having one common plan to approach a pitcher, even a good pitcher, a pretty good pitcher like James Paxton, who pitched against them on Friday. And they did it. And this is something that they're going to have to keep doing down the stretch, because obviously some teams have better pitching, some teams not as good. So the Cleveland Guardians, they're actually third in Major League Baseball in earned run average. So it's understandable that they had some difficulty against them. But I really think all the tools are there for the Blue Jays to finish up this season very strong. As I said, they're in a playoff position in the third wild card spot. I think at the very least they're going to hang on to that spot. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit to see them move up. Anything second wild card, first wild card, even winning the division, it's still within reach. And I think with a late run, and I definitely see the Blue Jays being able to do that, I think we're all going to be really happy with the results. And then, of course, what really matters is what happens in October. But first, they have to get there. So I'm going to be tuning in as they play down the stretch. Hopefully, you all will be too, and we'll see how it goes. And on that note, that's all I have for you this week. So let's go, Blue Jays. I will not be around next Thursday because I'm going to Cincinnati for the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on a bus trip, which leaves Toronto at 1:45 in the morning. So good luck to me. Anyway, let's go, Blue Jays. I'll see you again in a couple weeks.